welcome to my April reading wrap-up. Today I'm going to talk about all of the books I read in April. I read 6 books, which is the most I've read in a single month so far this year, so well done me. Here are the genres it fell into. I think mostly romance and a bit of fantasies. We're kind of used to this by now, like what else do we expect? On average, I rated books a 4.25 out of 5, so we are back up with high ratings, probably because of all of the romance and fantasy and romance fantasy from this month. Here is how many pages I was reading. I hit 2,500 for the month, so that's very fun. I had some little like trips and stuff booked, so you can see in some sections there's not much reading going on, and that's why I was just out and about. And on that note, May and June are going to be pretty hectic, but in a good way for me. So I don't know how consistent I'm going to be with reading. Miss Taylor Swift is coming to Ireland, so you know, I gotta be there. And I have some like holidays booked, so I mightn't be reading as much, and I'm considering combining May and June into one reading wrap up, possibly, depending on how many books I get through. So you'll see. But now that's out of the way, let's get into the actual reviews. So, first book that I read in April was Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. This is the 4th book in the Bridgerton series, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. And obviously this is historical romance. As of filming this video, the 3rd season of the Bridgerton TV show comes out in a few days later this week, and I'm very excited. I kept seeing so much promotion for this. I think it was like February and March, and that made me kind of panic read this so that I could watch the season as it came out and not have to wait to read the book. I'm really bad with spoilers. I hate being spoiled. It like actually ruins media for me. So the last 2 seasons I haven't been able to read in time for the season, and that I'm way behind and I miss the memes, all the stuff. So this time I'm ready. This book is probably my favorite of the Bridgertons so far. Some of that is because I really like Penelope and Nicola Coughlan. So I'm a bit biased towards Penelope and this book, I think, because I was just really enjoying her finally having her story. This book is set a bit in the future compared to the first Bridgerton. Like, Penelope is in her late 20s in the book. I don't know how similar that is to the season, haven't seen it yet. So she's in her late 20s and she's essentially a spinster in the eyes of the ton, and that kind of means she can do whatever she wants. Like, her mother has let off her about finding a match and is just contented with spending her life with Penelope in their house. That's why Penelope kind of goes through her ugly duckling story and is kind of able to dress herself how she wants and do her thing. Hence, you know, the transformation, even though Nicola Coughlan is gorgeous, so it's transformation. But yeah, I really liked Penelope in this book. She is clever and accomplished and out of her shell and doing stuff that makes her happy. I enjoyed immensely. Colin was less of a favorite. Colin was, he was shown to have a very quick temper in this book. And I suppose maybe, I don't know, it didn't quite fit what I saw Colin as. And he was so whiny and pissy throughout this whole book. He was either like giving out to Penelope about stuff, or like whining that he didn't have a purpose. And I get it, he is the 3rd son, you know, it's harder to establish himself because Anthony's whole thing is always like carrying on the Viscount stuff. Benedict is the artist, and as of this book he has like art in a big museum, I think. and then Colin just feels kind of left behind. So I get it, I see the motivations, but it didn't mean I had to enjoy the motivations. He just, yeah, he was so like, you have a purpose and I don't, I hate my life. Yeah, okay, cool dude, get a life. You're rich and like comfortable and have the most loving family, and you know, get a life. Find something. And he does, he finds something, so at least there's a bit of resolution to that. But yeah, because of that, he wasn't really my favorite, but I was still able to look around that because I enjoyed their dynamic. Like, I didn't enjoy him being whiny, but I enjoyed the kind of friends to lovers aspect, how Colin was coming to realize how much he overlooked Penelope throughout, what, the 20 years they've known each other-ish. So recommend to people who like Penelope and Colin. Definitely, I really enjoyed this, so it was a good one. Next, I read You Could Be So Pretty by Holly Bourne, and this is a YA dystopian book, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5. So Holly Bourne is slept on in the book community, I reckon. I don't see much about her books online, but I love her books. I read anything I can get my hands on that she has written. Thank you, Holly Bourne. So this book is set in the world of the Doctrine, okay? Watch out for some of these terms. It's very YA fantasy, dystopia, with these YA terms made up for the book that represents real things that really exist. So watch out for a load of capitalized words. We're living in the world of the Doctrine in this novel, and the Doctrine basically states that the world has reached a state of total gender equality, except that's not true at all. Really, it's a world where girls are given the illusion of choice while still being expected to live up to like crazy expectations. Belle and Joni are our two main characters. Belle is intent on having it all. She is following the Doctrine to a T. She is getting up at 4 a.m. She's doing her, I think, body worship exercise, and like she's dieting real crazy, all this kind of stuff, following these expectations. She must be perfect looking at all times, full face done wherever she goes, and she is known as a pretty, capital P. Then Joni is her opposite, the shadow of her. Joni exists to point out the hypocrisy of the Doctrine. She is very, you know, no makeup girly, trackies all day. She's known as an objectionable, and she faces harassment everywhere she goes for not conforming. But remember, it's her choice, and she has that choice because of this Doctrine. And that's kind of the world going on here. The two girls are competing to get a scholarship for the Education, which is basically a university in the city that's more removed from the Doctrine, and the people in that, the Education, don't follow it as heavily and basically aren't brainwashed as much as, say, small towns. What I liked about this book, as usual, were the strong feminist themes. Everything that is mentioned in this book happens in real life. It's not necessarily a dystopian novel at all, and that's the point. It's supposed to be like, hey, do you know the way this happens? People get ridiculed for not looking 100%. Yeah, look, huh? Choice, huh? So it's like, you know, it's really pointing out the real life aspect of this. I will say much of the feminism covered in this book is very newbie, feminism 101 kind of stuff. But remember, I said this is YA. This is for the young adults who are just starting out on their feminism journey. So I think this actually needs to be taken into consideration when you're reading this book. One big part of analyzing literature is realizing who the target audience is. And so that's why you will kind of hear me say, oh, I didn't like it, but it wasn't for me. If I'm talking about a book and I'll be like, it wasn't for me, it wasn't for me. It's because these literacy skills, while you're reading, you should be able to tell who the book is aimed at, and I'm not an expert, you know, I just read a lot, so don't scrutinize me, but that's how I approached this and the feminist topics in this. This is for your baby feminist, your 16-year-old who has just picked this book up and is having someone say, hey, this is really screwed up in our society, right? And that 16-year-old is going, yeah, keep that in mind if you're going to read this. One conversation point that I really like that is covered in here is the vilification of older women. Stick with me here. I don't know about you, but I have definitely heard anyone say, oh, Brenda at work hates me because she's old and I'm young, and she's ugly and I'm pretty, and she is just jealous of me. She is saying I should do this, this, and this. This is her advice. But no, she's just a cow. And so I find this really interesting because so many older women have lived our experiences, but under the patriarchy, some people still stereotype the idea of a bitter old woman being jealous of youth and beauty and whatever, and trying to corrupt the youth and beauty of a young individual, right? I think there are definitely instances where older women's advice is dismissed or written off because of that bitter old person idea or stereotype idea, whatever you want to call it. So I can see how older women can be misunderstood in that way. And obviously, look, I'm not talking about every old woman ever, you know, knows best. I'm saying that there really is this, she doesn't know what she's talking about, she's jealous of me, she's bitter. And I feel like this really came through in this book, and maybe this is me as someone in my 20s reading it rather than a teenager reading it, but I like that. I got that from the book. And that was the big message that intrigued me. And also there was, you know, mother-daughter relationships, which is always something I'm like, yes, I love to see this in these books. And the contrast between types of mother-daughter relationships, etc. So mini tangent over. There you go. This is probably actually a long section, but it just goes to show that I really did enjoy this book, and I do want other people to read it. So I recommend it, especially to young people. As usual, check your trigger warnings. They are definitely in here. Next, we have a different Holly. I read The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. And yes, I'm keeping the topping signed covers, first edition, whatever. It's now a display book now that I've read it. This is a YA fantasy book set in the same universe as The Cruel Prince. I gave it 4 stars. So I am a big fan of The Cruel Prince. I recently did a video talking about Book Talk books. Check that out if you haven't. And in that I talk about The Cruel Prince. Spoiler alert, I love the Cruel Prince series. The second I read it, I knew I loved Holly Black's writing, and so this is a sequel series. This is the first book in the sequel series. And I believe it's a duology, and the second book did come out recently, so that'll get read sometime in the future. But I got to this one now, and this follows Oak, Baby Oak from The Cruel Prince? Yeah, he's not Baby Oak anymore. He is he 16 or is he 18? I don't know. He's a teen. So he's grown up anyway, grown up. And basically this mostly follows Siren. Kind of goes by Ren, she does. She was in the Queen of Nothing, I believe. The last Cruel Prince. But I didn't actually remember her. I think as I read through this book, I was like, vague memories of this character, but not really. This book is really, really fast paced, like constantly moving. There's like, it's like scene after scene after scene, chapter after chapter. It really does move very quickly. I really enjoy Holly Black's writing, and I always have. And so this universe and her writing was right up my alley. So it was already set up for a pretty good rating. One thing that stuck out to me about this was how kind of dark it was for a YA book. I can't remember if The Cruel Prince had as many underlying like dark themes as this. It probably did, and it just kind of went over my head, or I just didn't notice it as much. But like, it's written simply, but there is some dark stuff in here. I thought it was good, and it really added depth, but I was like, whoa, is that what this universe is usually like? I also really enjoyed the ending. No spoilers, don't worry, but Holly Black has such a knack for writing the endings. She is so good at it. Every time, she's got me. It was the end of, I think, The Wicked King. Oh, I could not wait for the next book. And the ending of this did not disappoint. So well done, Holly Black. I really enjoyed this ending. I quite simply recommend this to anyone who has enjoyed the Cruel Prince series. I also do want to point out how pretty this book is. While I have you here, we have a nice little map looking thing. And then I want to just show you this can't be a spoiler because it's first page, but how pretty the little illustrations are for chapter pages. And then just like the tops of the pages, I think are pretty cute. And the line breaks and stuff. Just, yeah, an overall very pretty book. It fits the Fae nature and the story. So yeah, pretty good book. Another solid choice for this month. Next up, I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I'm sure you probably have heard of this. It is a romantasy. Kind of went crazy on TikTok, BookTok. For a reason, yeah, for a reason. I gave this 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. And that's not a shock to me at all. I kind of knew I would. I am the basic BookTok girly bitch, whatever you want to call me. I usually love, especially the romantasy that BookTok hands me. So I kind of knew. Going in, I kind of knew, right? So the premise, if you have been under a rock, I don't blame you if you've been under a rock, but here's the premise. We have 20-year-old Violet Sorrengail. She has some vague chronic illness from birth, basically kind of weak limbs, joints and stuff. Oh, what's the word? Ligaments. Basically weak ligaments and joints and paper bones, essentially. She snaps like a twig. And Navarre, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Navarre, it's essentially a state that's always at war. And so everyone is all military. Everything is military, okay? And so everyone is forced into conscription, essentially. And you have to go to university to do your thing. So there's the scribe quadrant who are all about books and history and like maps and all this stuff. There's the medics, you know, there's everything you would need for like war prep. But then the elite, the dragon riders are the big guys. They are the warriors of the military, essentially, right? And so Violet has trained to be a scribe basically her whole life. But then her mother's like, haha, no, I'm a general. Your brother and sister were big dragon riders. You're gonna be a big famous dragon rider. So off you go into dragon riding school. But the thing is, the dragon riding college is so dangerous that like only 1/3 of the applicants survive, essentially. Because that makes sense when your region is at war, to kill off most of the warriors before they even make it. Violet is now kind of thrown into this extremely dangerous situation where she's trying to survive. And also, by the way, her classmates are just like allowed to murder people, and they're allowed to murder each other just, you know, cause for, I don't know, the betterment of the military or something, I don't know. And also people hate her because of who her mother is. So she has like this big old target on her back, also being incredibly predisposed to bone breakage is not really in her favor. So, you know, it's looking rough. It's fun. It's pretty fun. This is really the book for the divergent girlies who are now grown-ups. You know, when you were 12, 13, 14 reading Divergent and now you're in your 20s, Fourth Wing is the way to go. Oh my god, the Dragon Riders, they're so Dauntless coded. Like, I'm reading it and I was like, ooh, I'm back. It felt lovely, actually. I love a good magic school, academy, that kind of thing. Love it. Love it so much. And then obviously there's romance. There was like a trickle of a love triangle that's not really a love triangle. You'll understand if you've read it. But yeah, I really enjoyed Fourth Wing. I want to also say that a lot of these words in here, I don't know where Yaros got her inspiration. I kind of do. But they're definitely Celtic in nature. There's some words that are very close to Irish words. For example, and I'm gonna ruin this for you, I think Violet's mother, this big general, this big important lady, her and her dragon, you know, they're so important, and this big strong dragon, their name is I'm Sure. And if you speak Irish, you know that I'm Sure means weather. And so that took me out. Sometimes I'd be reading and be like, oh, my mother's strong dragon, weather, I'm sure, okay. And then another one, it was like, in the medic's wing, the Lias serums, that's the Irish word for medicine. So it was like medicine. She was using the medicine on her. So that was very funny. There was other instances of it, like there was definitely the word for sun was used for something that was hot. So it was just took me out a little bit. Might be a somewhat unique experience. I hope now whenever you see I'm Sure, Lias or anything like that, you're like, oh, thanks Katie. Because yeah, it happened a startling amount of times. Still recommend it though. Still really enjoyed it. Good book. And I have Iron Flame. Next book that I read this month was Holly Bourne's How Do You Like Me Now? This was the book I pulled out of my TBR jar last month, and it is a contemporary fiction, and I gave it 3.5 stars. That is probably like one of the lowest scores I've ever given a Holly Bourne book. I am so sorry. But, right, I'll give you the idea before I get into the discussion. We have Tori, is the main character, Tori Bailey. And she's something of a wellness author kind of vibe. Like self-help author kind of thing. She had a mental breakdown in her 20s. She ran off and did her thing, realized what the meaning of life was and wrote a book about it. And now she's like famous, and it's now 10 years later, she's in her 30s, and she's like, oh, doing all these public speaking events and being like, yeah, woohoo, I'm like totally perfect. And everyone around her thinks she's totally perfect because she has this amazing career. But she has loads of problems, basically, that she's hiding from literally everyone, including her best friends, essentially, kind of. So her boyfriend won't even look at her. Her boyfriend, who she has been dating now for 8 years, and he won't even talk about marriage. He won't even talk to her about kids. And she's like stressed because she's in her 30s, and she's like, come on now, at least are we going to have them? And he's like, don't talk about a woman, you know? And her self-esteem, non-existent. And the kind of inciting incident into everything is her best friend gets a boyfriend. Her best friend was usually, you know, the single friend who she could look to be like, see, my life's not that bad. Kind of shit. But then obviously she does really love her best friend. Tori is not the best person in the universe. She really flip-flops between someone I would really not like to be around to incredibly sympathetic character. It happens. Again, she's written as a human being, so it makes sense. It takes place over a course of a few months as she starts to spiral again and again and again, and she's trying to write her second book. The thing about this, why I gave it 3.5, was that I felt almost too young for it. The character was really talking about like, oh, I'm in my mid-30s and all my friends are having kids, getting married, like buying their houses, and they're all settled, and then they're this and that and the other. And I have my career, but none of the personal life stuff. And she's like essentially going with career over family and freaking out because she's like, it's too late to start again. I have to wage this out with this boyfriend who doesn't seem to love me anymore. And it just, yeah, I was like, okay, cool. I'm not there. Thankfully, I'm not spiraling about being in my 30s, because I'm not in my 30s. So I really felt like, oh, okay, can't relate to that. No one in my life is getting married. No one in my life is having kids. You know, like we're still very firmly in the early to mid 20 group now. And so everyone's kind of just like outwardly a mess. Maybe when you hit 30, you're inwardly a mess and it's not acceptable to be outwardly a mess. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not there yet. So as I was reading it, I was like, yeah, can't relate. Maybe I'll revisit this in my 30s if I start spiraling. Holly Bourne does write about being in your 30s a lot of the time, or like late 20s, early 30s. But it's never the subject of the book. It's usually just like, yeah, the character is this age. Whereas this book, it's about being in your 30s. Like, it is relatable, I assume, to people in their 30s. It is about it. Like, literally everyone in the character's life is like, whoa, why are you so obsessed with how old you are and how old we are? And so, yeah, that's why I didn't fully vibe with it. I also just didn't love Tori. Like, I felt for her. Like, the last few chapters, it really did, like, grab my heart for her as a fictional character on a page. But it's still like, I felt it, like how devastating everything has been, because obviously everything is leading up to the real breakdown near the end. So like when just everything goes to shit, it is very powerful. And I do give that to Holly Bourne. She writes such powerful books, and just, yeah, I really felt for the poor character and just everything going wild. But the main takeaway I would take from How Do You Like Me Now is it's never too late to start again. That's like, I'd say that's almost the slogan of the lesson from the book. The final book I have been nattering on. I'm in such a chatty mood today. I don't know if you can tell through the screen. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, oh my god, I have to tell you guys. Okay, so the final book I read was Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This is the first book in a contemporary romance series. There's 2 series, wait for it, I've already bought the next book. Daisy Hates and Magnolia Parks kind of swap, so you read Magnolia Parks, then Daisy Hates, then the second Magnolia Parks, and then the second Daisy Hates, so they go together basically. But yes, so I read Magnolia Parks and I gave it 4.5 out of 5. The best way I can describe Magnolia Parks is Gossip Girl, but make it London. If you like Gossip Girl, you will like Magnolia Parks. It has the same energy, to me anyway, right? So in Magnolia Parks, we follow Magnolia and BJ as they navigate some sticky situations. Magnolia and BJ are like millionaires, socialites. They kind of just exist for a living, famous parents-ish, a lot of money, and they grew up together. They really well and truly know each other inside and out, and in the end they're kind of each other's person, but there's a lot going on. This book kind of just follows along with them and what's going on and the crazy stuff that's going on in their lives. That's the big thing. Magnolia and BJ are like, kind of like you'd think of as inevitable to come to each other and come back to each other, but they just keep missing. They keep hurting each other. And it really is like Gossip Girl and TV show. The same feeling where your favorite couple in the TV show, Gossip Girl, get together, but then within 2 episodes, you know, they're fighting. They're not on good terms, but that keeps you hooked because it's the dynamic, it's the whole, will they end up? Do they get their happy ending? That's essentially what's keeping me with this. Will they get their happy ending? The kind of tagline here is, how many loves do you really get in a lifetime? Sums it up perfectly. Because there's other people in this story. There's other people kind of in their orbit, and the love that everyone has for each other, it's so heartbreaking when you're rooting for one or another. And I'm trying to keep it vague so it's not like spoiler town here, but I can also see why all the girlies have this tabbed to hell and underlined, and there are so many gorgeous, gorgeous quotes, especially from, I think, BJ's point of view. Oh, I also still do not condone that name. How dare he have the name BJ? But moving on. He thinks quite beautifully about Magnolia, kinda like the very star-crossed lovers-esque Romeo Juliet prose that he thinks in is very interesting. I can definitely see why people would be really eager to grab bits and quote this book. So if you're into that, I highly recommend reading this and reading it with your tabs and your highlighter nearby, because this is a very, very quotable, lovely book to read, to grab nice quotes. But it is such a roller coaster, and I imagine the whole series is. I've seen some reactions. The last Magnolia Parks book came out earlier this year, and the reactions I've seen from people have been drastic. I'm in the dark as much as you, but I definitely recommend Magnolia Parks, but especially to those Gossip Girl girlies. Finally, I've gotten through those 6 books. Before I let you go, I am going to grab a book from my TBR jar for the month. So let's have a look. Okay, I have one. Hidden Bodies. So that is you number 2. Here it is. Got the show cover and all. Is this the love season? Spoiler alert, I love love. So, okay. Well, that is everything for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.